random greeting. But today, I'm asking the question not rhetorically, but seriously. How are you doing? And the reason I'm asking is, I'm not really sure how I'm doing. In terms of raw honesty, I'd have to say that I fluctuate between days of sheer determination in which my goal is to fix the situations or conditions of everyone under my care, to days of simple depression in which my goal is to shut out the chaos and confusion that seems to characterize and complicate every aspect of life and relationship these days. But as you and I sit here today and look into the new year, we have to do so from some perspective. And I would like to think that we're looking into a new year with some sense of hopeful anticipation. Anticipation that we can be determined to actually get some things done. But it's also tempered by the obvious realism. The realism of the frustration of the past year. It causes us to wonder whether or not anything will change. So are we really destined to go into and through another year expecting the same kind of experiences we've had this past year? I think the answer is a resoundingly no. Let me remind you of some opening words that I've found comfort in recently. Words to a psalm that most people are familiar with, whether you're a churchgoer or not. The words of the psalm go like this: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures." Now, I know it's kind of odd to think about the Lord as a shepherd today, because when pressed, I think most of us would have to admit that while we find some things that are comforting or reassuring about these words, the metaphor leaves us lacking a little bit. It's not familiar to us. Now, what is actually behind the metaphor? Well, let me just reason with you for just a moment. The psalm is attributed to King David, himself a shepherd as a young man who cared for sheep in the pasture. But at this time, the time of his writing, is probably the king of Israel. Now, the interesting thing about that is that it was common in the culture of that time to think of kings or those in authority over people as shepherds. So a shepherd was a metaphor, it was an image that David and many others would have understood and connected with intimately at the time. You see, a shepherd, whether it was one caring for sheep or for people, was in the field or on a throne, was one who would lead and feed, provide and protect. And whether it was sheep or people, neither of them would want for anything, as the shepherd simply carried out his duty. In fact, peace and contentment would characterize the lives of those who were being cared for under the watchful care of the shepherd, as they are pictured lying down in green pastures. Now, obviously, this was a comforting and confidence-building concept that David had of God and those under his care. But let's face it, the image of a shepherd probably doesn't do a lot for people like us, especially as it's applied to people in authority. Especially in these days of COVID, authorities have done little to create comfort or build confidence in those they lead. And associated images are not likely to have the same impact that they had in David's day. But the Lord has not changed in nature or in behavior toward those who trust Him. And while the nature and behavior of God is the basis of our comfort and confidence today, confidence that we'll be okay no matter what comes our way, it would be helpful to have a more familiar point of contact or identification. So here's what I want to ask you to join me in contemplating today. What image or familiar theme more easily communicates the concepts of comfort and security in your life? For me, it's the image of a coach. When I think of Psalm 23, I often rehearse it this way: "The Lord is my coach. I shall not be in want. He makes me take a knee in the warm summer infield grass." Now, while I'm certain that does little for you, my friend, there's an image that works in the same way for you. And the question is, what is that image that connects to you what David described with the metaphor of the shepherd? For me, it's a coach, and for good reason. I'll discuss a little later on. But I want you to take the time and spend the effort in the next day or two to consider the images that are meaningful to you, because it matters. And we'll see that as we continue to walk through this psalm in our next several talks. The next year, whatever it holds in our relationship with God. And for that reason, we can take comfort and have confidence. So until our next talk, God bless you guys, and have a happy new year. I love you all.